The day everything went off the rails started like any other, quiet, unremarkable. My sister, Jessica, had just dropped by my place for a casual visit. We were barely 2 minutes into catching up when, out of nowhere, a couple of those so-called HOA enforcers slapped handcuffs on her like she was some kind of fugitive. There was something unsettling in their eyes. Cold. Like they had some personal score to settle, drunk on their little bit of power and itching to humiliate someone. But what they didn't realize was that Jessica wasn't just some random neighbor. Behind that calm, steady look of hers, she was hiding something. A secret that would set off a domino effect none of them could have predicted. And then the Secret Service showed up. Whatever smug looks those HOA guys were wearing, gone. Replaced with wide-eyed panic. That's the moment everything changed. But before we really dive into what happened, if you're just tuning in, make sure to hit that follow button, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. If this story hooks you, hit 1. If not, press 0. I appreciate any kind of feedback. It keeps me motivated to share more stories that matter. Anyway, back to Silver Pine Lane. I used to think neighborhoods were supposed to feel like home. You know, friendly waves during evening walks, borrowing sugar from next door when you're baking at midnight, keeping an eye on each other's kids. That's what I believed until I moved here. The first time I set foot on that perfect little street, fresh blacktop, lawns trimmed within an inch of their lives, I thought I'd stumbled into a postcard. I was fresh off a divorce, just trying to find some peace. Jessica lived a couple blocks down and had been nudging me to settle here for months. It's quiet, she'd said. Tight-knit. Safe. On paper, it sounded great. In reality? Not so much. The homeowners association here had rules so over the top, it felt like signing a contract with the devil. Stuff like, exactly what shade of beige your fence could be, how many times your dog could bark before you got fined, and how fast you had to roll your trash bin back after pickup. It wasn't about order, it was control. Still, I bought a little bungalow. Nothing fancy, but it felt like mine. All I wanted was some peace and quiet. Instead, from the moment I moved in, I got flooded with warning letters. My grass was apparently too tall, by half an inch. Or the vines on my trellis were encroaching on a neighbor's airspace. It was non-stop nitpicking, harassment wrapped up in official language. I kept telling myself, just follow the rules, keep your head down. Don't stir the pot. But there's only so long you can live under a boot. Jessica was the only one I could really talk to. She's 3 years older, but we've always been close. She's been through it all with me, breakups, new starts, the whole roller coaster. She's got this quiet strength about her. Used to serve in the Peace Corps, so she's got grit, but also knows how to keep cool under pressure. When I started venting about the HOA nonsense, she didn't tell me to let it go. She looked me in the eye and said, "Play along for now, but we're going to figure out what's really going on here. If they're crossing a line, we'll deal with it." Turns out, that chance came sooner than either of us expected. See, Silver Pine Lane had this ridiculous setup where the HOA had their own little squad of enforcers. They called themselves HOA cops, like they were something official. Their job was supposedly to make sure nobody broke the rules, but the way they acted, it was like they thought they were running the town. They strutted around in uniforms, puffed up with fake authority. And to be honest, I doubted most of them even had any real legal background. But that didn't stop them from flexing hard, especially around women. It was like the whole neighborhood was just their stage, and we were all forced extras. It was just a regular Saturday afternoon when Jessica came by. She wasn't her usual self, clearly upset. Turns out her friend Rachel, who lived just across the street from me, had run into a serious issue with the HOA enforcers. Rachel's teenage son had been dared by some classmates to dig through the community dumpster, looking for a phone someone had lost. Harmless enough, right? But next thing she knew, those so-called HOA cops were all over her front yard, threatening her with fines, and even tossing around the word arrest. Over a kid stepping into a trash area? It was ridiculous. But that was their game: fear, pressure, total control. I looked at Jessica and asked, "So what do we do?" She took a slow sip of tea, then met my eyes with that calm, determined look I remembered from when we were kids. "We find out who's behind all this," she said. Then we shine a big OL light on them. Not even 5 minutes later, we heard shouting out front. We hurried to the porch, and there they were. 2 uniformed HOA enforcers, standing like they owned the block. One was short and stocky, the other tall and wiry. Both had that smug look I'd come to expect. The short guy pointed straight at Jessica. "Hey you," he barked. "Are you the homeowner?" Jessica didn't even flinch. "No," she said, "but I'm the homeowner's sister." "Well then," he snapped, "you're trespassing." She raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. "Trespassing? On my own sister's property? That doesn't even make sense." Her voice stayed calm, but you could hear the disbelief underneath. My heart started pounding. I'd dealt with these guys before, gotten warnings for stuff like a slightly overgrown lawn or leaving my trash bin out too long, but accusing my sister of a crime? That was new. Then the tall guy jumped in. "Ma'am, our records show that only the listed homeowner and approved residents are allowed to be on the property without prior HOA permission. If you're not on the lease or deed, you need written clearance." Jessica gave a dry laugh. "This is my sister's house. I'm her guest. You can't just tell me to leave." The short one stepped closer, puffing out his chest like he was somebody important. "Ma'am, I don't think you get it. We have authority here. If you resist, we're allowed to place you under HOA arrest." That's when I stepped between them. "You're going to arrest my sister? Under what law?" He whipped his head toward me. "We have reason to believe she's been encouraging others to violate HOA rules, handing out unauthorized flyers, and harassing our officers." I stared at him. What he said made zero sense. Jessica never handed out flyers. And even if she had, how was that grounds for arrest? Jessica stood her ground, arms still crossed. "Show me the statute that says you can do this. You're acting like vigilantes." Then, without another word, the short guy reached into his belt and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. They glinted in the sun, sharp and cold. "If you don't come quietly," he said, "we'll be forced to detain you immediately. The HOA board gave us the authority." My stomach dropped. "You can't do this," I shouted, stepping in front of Jessica. The tall one shoved me hard. I stumbled back and caught myself on the porch railing. Before I could react, they had her. One of them grabbed her arms and yanked them behind her. She didn't fight. She just looked them dead in the eyes, like she was burning their faces into her memory. It was hot out, the sun beating down, and I felt sweat trickling down my back. They were actually taking her. But where? The HOA's little made-up holding facility? I was in shock. Totally frozen. My words meant nothing to them. And within minutes, they were gone, dragging Jessica down the path, leaving me standing alone on the porch, speechless. That was the moment everything changed. Up until then, I tried to live peacefully. Go with the flow. But that day flipped a switch. Something darker took root, anger, maybe. Definitely a hunger for justice. Maybe even revenge. Because in that moment I stopped believing in fairness. All I could think was, how did they get away with that? And more importantly, how was I going to get my sister back? I didn't wait. The community center sat tucked behind the tennis courts, a low, squat building most folks barely noticed. Outside, families were out playing doubles on those pristine courts, completely unaware of the chaos going on just a few steps away. Inside? A whole different scene. I found Jessica locked inside a tiny office they'd turned into a makeshift holding cell. The door had a heavy metal lock on it, but no police signage, no official presence, just more HOA enforcers standing around, arms crossed like bouncers at a bad nightclub. I pushed forward and demanded to see her, but 2 of them moved to block me, broad shoulders and blank stares. I recognized the tall guy from earlier. "She's staying here until further notice," he said flatly. "Unless she decides to cooperate." Cooperate with what? I snapped, barely keeping my voice steady. My anger was boiling over, mixed with fear I couldn't shake. "She's been interfering with HOA operations," he replied. "We'll question her. If she agrees to follow the rules, maybe we let her off with a fine." It was beyond ridiculous. I pulled out my phone and tried calling the police. They told me it was a civil matter, because the HOA was part of a private community. The officer on the line said, If you have a complaint, file a report. We'll look into it. No urgency. No promises. Just a cold brush-off. I stood there, stunned. My sister was locked up in an office by a bunch of wannabe cops, and I had no legal leg to stand on. That's when I noticed someone in the corner of the room. He stood out immediately, a man in a sharp, dark suit, totally different from the uniformed enforcers. He leaned casually against a desk, just watching the whole thing unfold. His hair was mostly gray, and there was something composed about him. Like he wasn't just witnessing all this, he was evaluating it. For a split second, we locked eyes. There was a flicker of something there, recognition, maybe? Like he knew Jessica. Or maybe me. But just as quickly, he broke the stare and looked back down at his phone, acting like nothing had happened. I narrowed my eyes, but he said nothing. Before I could say anything else, the enforcers stepped in again. "You need to leave," one of them warned. "Or face consequences." For a moment, I wanted to test them. Let them try. But Jessica's voice echoed in my head, "Pick your battles." So I backed off, angry, shaking, but determined to find another way to get her out, legally or not. By nightfall, I was a wreck. I paced around the living room, phone in hand, calling anyone I could think of. I scrolled through the neighborhood Facebook group, searching for any kind of help. Most folks were too scared to get involved, but a few offered quiet support. Some even said they were considering heading to the community center to make a scene. But something in my gut told me to wait. Get the facts. Stay smart. It wasn't until 2 a.m. that I finally passed out, curled up on the couch, phone still in my hand. The next morning, I woke to a loud knock on the front door. My heart instantly leapt into my throat. I braced myself, expecting those HOA thugs again. But when I cracked open the door, I didn't see uniforms. I saw suits. 3 men stood there. The one in front flashed a badge. "Secret Service," he said. "May we come in?" I froze. My breath caught in my chest. This had to be some kind of mistake. The Secret Service? Why would they be at my door? The lead agent introduced himself as Agent Corbin. He looked tense, on edge. "We're looking for a woman named Jessica," he said. "We've been told she was seen in this neighborhood." I hesitated, completely thrown off. She's my sister," I finally managed. "But the HOA, they have her in custody." As soon as I said it, I realized how crazy it sounded. Even to me. Agent Corbin's expression changed. His brow tightened. "Custody?" he repeated. "Your homeowners association is holding her in custody?" He glanced at one of the other agents, and suddenly their whole vibe shifted. Less questioning, more mission mode. "We need to see her. Now." I didn't even ask questions. I just grabbed my keys and we headed out the door. The agent stayed right behind me, walking fast. The sun had just come up, casting a golden glow over everything. It felt wrong, too calm, too bright for what was about to go down. As we walked, more neighbors peeked out of their doors to grab the morning paper. But when they saw those black SUVs crawling down the street behind us, everyone froze. Whispers started spreading like wildfire. By the time we got to the community center, a small crowd had already formed out front. People stood around murmuring, confused and curious, while the so-called HOA cops clustered near the entrance, looking nothing like their usual cocky selves. The second they spotted the federal agents, their confidence just evaporated. No more smug grins. Just pale faces and nervous glances. Agent Corbin stepped forward, his voice firm and commanding. "We have reason to believe you're detaining a federal witness. That's a serious violation of her civil rights. Step aside." The short enforcer's jaw clenched. For a second, I really thought he might try something. The whole scene froze, like time hit pause. Then he cleared his throat and muttered, "We'll need to see some ID." Corbin didn't miss a beat. With one smooth motion, he flashed his credentials, and the guy visibly recoiled, like he'd been slapped. "What? This way," he mumbled, almost stumbling backward as he led us inside. We moved quickly through the hallway and stopped at the cramped little office where they'd been holding Jessica. She was still handcuffed to a metal chair, but the moment she saw Agent Corbin, her whole face lit up. "Thank God," she breathed. One of the agents moved fast, unlocking the cuffs while the rest of us filed in. It felt like a movie playing in slow motion. The enforcers pressed themselves up against the walls, looking like deer in headlights. Total panic. And right there in the corner was him. The man in the suit from the day before. Just standing there, arms folded, watching in silence. My whole body was shaking with relief as Jessica slowly stood up. Her wrists were red and raw. Corbin turned toward the man in the corner. "I've been looking for you, Campbell," he said sharply. "You've done a hell of a job disappearing." The room shifted again, like all the air had been sucked out. That man wasn't just some bystander. He was the one they were after. Campbell didn't say a word. Then Corbin turned to Jessica. "We got your message," he said. "Came as fast as we could. Are you all right?" She nodded, gently rubbing her wrists. "Better now that you're here." I just stood there, completely frozen. My mind was spinning. Jessica knew the Secret Service? Why were they coming for her? 100 questions swirled in my head, but before I could say anything, the HOA cops started trying to sneak out. "Not so fast," Corbin barked. "Nobody's going anywhere until local law enforcement gets here." You could see it in their eyes. They knew it was over. That little fantasy they'd been living in with all their made-up power was crumbling right in front of them. The next hour passed in a blur. The same local police who had brushed me off just the day before suddenly showed up in force. Flashing lights lit up the whole parking lot. Officers rushed in, this time responding because the Secret Service had called. One by one, the HOA enforcers were questioned, forced to explain what they were doing, how far over the line they'd stepped. And then they got cuffed themselves. Walked out like criminals, now under suspicion of unlawful detention and intimidation. Some of them mumbled excuses about just following orders. But the guy really pulling the strings, the HOA president, Kyle Beck? Nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Jessica and I were escorted back to my place by Corbin and one of his agents. Inside, they made sure we were safe. Corbin handed Jessica a glass of water, and the two of them spoke quietly for a while at my kitchen table. I was pacing nearby, nerves shot and brain on fire. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to her and blurted out, "What is going on? Jessica, how do you know the Secret Service? Why did they come for you?" She let out a long breath, her shoulders slumping a little. "I've been working with them. Not officially. Informally." She looked at me, her voice steady but tired. "That guy, Campbell, he's been on their radar. They think he's been forging documents and funneling money to extremist groups." My jaw dropped. "Wait, that guy? The one from the community center?" She nodded slowly. "I spotted him at a local charity event a few months ago. I recognized him from a security briefing back when I was doing some international relief work. So I reached out quietly to the authorities." I stared at her, trying to process it all. She went on. "He was pretending to be an HOA consultant. But really he was sliding into the community's financial systems. And it turns out, some of the HOA's upper management, Beck included, were benefiting. That's why they were so paranoid about anyone asking too many questions." I swallowed hard. "So that's why they came after you." She nodded again. "Yeah. They wanted me quiet. All I did was poke around in their books, just trying to figure out if they were shaking down our neighbors. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This was way bigger than I thought. That's when Agent Corbin jumped in. We believe Campbell, along with the HOA president, was using the association as a front to launder money. They were threatening residents with bogus fines and even threatening to seize property, basically using fear to get untraceable cash. Jessica's involvement, trying to help people and ask the right questions, had clearly made her a target. They saw her as a threat. I turned to look at her, and suddenly everything clicked. "That's why you kept pushing me to gather evidence, but told me to stay quiet. You knew it was something serious." She nodded slowly. Her eyes were glossy with tears. "I didn't want to drag you into it," she said softly. "I had to wait until I could safely get in touch with Corbin. But once the HOA started coming after me, things spiraled out of control. The mix of emotions bubbling inside me, relief, fury, disbelief, it all hit at once. What started as an annoying HOA drama had unraveled into a full-on criminal operation. What about the revenge we talked about? I muttered, thinking back to those helpless, angry moments when I felt like I couldn't protect her. But then I looked at her wrists, finally free, though still bruised from those handcuffs. And I realized real revenge was justice. In the days that followed, everything blew up. Campbell was arrested. Local news stations couldn't get enough of the story, calling it everything from a scandal to a tragedy. The entire HOA board stepped down in disgrace as investigators uncovered fraud, intimidation, and abuse of power. The fake officers who detained Jessica? They were charged. As for Kyle Beck, the guy behind it all, he vanished. Word was he skipped town in the middle of the night. There were sightings in nearby cities, but no one could pin him down. The Secret Service issued bulletins, but he kept slipping through the cracks. The neighborhood, for the first time in a long while, could breathe again. People walked their dogs without fear of being fined for using the wrong leash. Kids played on the lawns without being told they were violating grass codes. It felt like waking up from a bad dream. But even with the calm returning, I couldn't feel true peace. Not until Beck was found. Not until he answered for every scare tactic, every lie, every moment he made us feel powerless. Jessica stayed by my side through the media circus. Reporters knocked, called, emailed. We kept our mouths shut. At least until things settled down. We were in this together, and nothing about it felt over. Sometimes neighbors would stop us in the street. A few said we were heroes. Others, well, they weren't so kind. Some blamed us for ruining the neighborhood's reputation. I couldn't help but laugh at that one. What reputation? The place was rotting from the inside. All we did was drag the truth into the sunlight. One evening, I found Jessica sitting at my kitchen table, hunched over a thick folder. Her face was serious, her eyes locked on whatever she was reading. "What's that?" I asked gently. She looked up. "Evidence," she said. "Shelby gave it to me. Remember her? She and a few others kept financial documents the HOA had tried to seize. It's enough to map out a paper trail. We might be able to link the funds directly to Beck." I hesitated. "Shouldn't you let Agent Corbin handle that?" "I will," she said, letting out a tired sigh. "But I don't trust anyone else to see the whole picture. I need to do this, for all the people who were bullied, fined, and silenced. I won't sleep until Beck's held accountable." Something shifted in me at that moment. All the times I'd felt humiliated, afraid, like a stranger in my own home. All of it could be traced back to him. Kalbeck. He wasn't just some paper-pushing president. He was a predator. And now, the tables had turned. He made me feel small. He locked up my sister. He turned a peaceful community into a place of fear. Now it was his turn to run scared. "I'm with you," I said, placing my hand gently on her shoulder. And I meant it. For the next few weeks, we were neck-deep in spreadsheets, bank statements, old property records, and flagged wire transfers. We basically turned my dining table into an investigation HQ. Jessica was a natural at spotting shady patterns, probably from her years working overseas and handling nonprofit finances. She noticed things I never would have seen: unusual payment intervals, donations that didn't make sense, charities with no real offices or staff. Eventually, the pieces started to fall into place. Those charities receiving donations? Shell organizations. Nothing more than paper fronts. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. What started as some twisted HOA power trip turned out to be part of something much darker. Turns out, some of those fake charities were linked to extremist groups. And the deeper we dug, the angrier we got. This wasn't just about annoying fines or yard violations anymore. We had to stop it. About a month after the big bust, someone from the local police department, someone who still had our backs, reached out. He told us there'd been a possible sighting of Kyle Beck. A small town, maybe 2 hours away. He was using a fake name, but someone had recognized him from the news. I was furious. My first instinct was to call Agent Corbin, which I did, but he was tied up on another assignment, waiting for official leads. That wasn't fast enough for me. Something lit up inside me. I couldn't sit around and wait anymore. When I suggested we go check it out ourselves, just to confirm it was really him, Jessica hesitated. She reminded me it was risky. And of course, she was right. But all I could think about was her sitting in that little office, cuffed to a chair. All the neighbors too scared to speak up. The fear. The humiliation. I'm done feeling like a victim, I told her. I need closure. She looked at me, long and hard. And then she nodded. So we made a plan. At dawn, we hit the road. It felt like something out of a spy movie, our hearts pounding, nerves shot. Jessica's phone buzzed constantly with calls from Corbin, but we ignored them. This one we needed to do on our own. The tip led us to a rundown motel on the edge of town. It was the kind of place you wouldn't look at twice. Faded paint, a flickering neon sign, and a mostly empty lot. My stomach flipped as we pulled in. We scanned the area, eyes darting between rooms, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man whose face had haunted our thoughts. Broad forehead. Sharp nose. That cold, calculating stare. We'd only seen him in official photos, but we'd know him anywhere. We parked behind a row of overgrown shrubs and waited. After what felt like forever, he finally stepped out of one of the rooms. My breath caught in my throat. He looked different, wearing a ball cap and loose, baggy clothes, but I recognized him immediately. Jessica and I locked eyes. She opened the 911 screen on her phone but didn't hit call yet. The plan was simple: get confirmation, snap a photo, and contact the authorities. No confrontation. No danger. But of course, things never go according to plan. Just as we started to circle around to get a clear shot, Beck looked up. And the second he saw us, his face twisted. He knew. Then he ran. Bolted across the parking lot without a word. For a second, panic hit me hard, but my body moved before my mind could stop it. Jessica and I took off after him, yelling, "Stop!" like we actually thought he'd listen. He darted around the corner, disappearing into a narrow alley. We were right behind him. My legs burned, heart racing. I nearly tripped on a crack in the pavement, but Jessica grabbed my arm, steadying me as we ran. We turned the corner, and there he was. Pinned against a chain-link fence, eyes darting, looking for any way out. "What do you want?" he barked, his voice sharp with desperation. Jessica raised her phone and snapped a photo. "We have proof," she panted. "It's over, Beck." His face twisted into something hateful. "You nosy little..." And then, without warning, he lunged. Reaching for her phone like an animal backed into a corner. For a split second, I thought he was going to hit her. But then it hit me, just like that, an image of Jessica bound to that chair, helpless. All because of him. My rage exploded. I stepped between them and shoved him hard. He stumbled backward, crashing into the fence with a metallic clang. "You destroyed lives," I hissed, shaking with fury. "You locked up my sister, terrorized innocent people, and now you want to run?" He stared at me, pure venom in his eyes. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I've got connections that could bury you." His threats didn't scare me. Not anymore. "Good," I snapped. "Let them try. We're done being afraid." Jessica still had her phone up, camera recording everything. Beck's glare never left our faces, and then he sneered. Just as Beck braced himself against the fence like he was about to lunge, we heard it, tires screeching behind us. 2 unmarked SUVs came tearing into the lot, engines growling. My whole body froze, but then I saw who stepped out. Agent Corbin. Gun drawn. Calm and steady. "Kyle Beck," he shouted. "Hands where we can see them." Beck's face dropped. The moment hit him hard. He knew it was over. Slowly he raised his hands. Within seconds, federal agents swarmed in. They tackled him to the ground, cuffed him, and hauled him up like he weighed nothing. As they dragged him away, he shot Jessica and me one last hateful glare. But I didn't flinch. I stood there, grounded, steady, finally feeling something close to peace. This wasn't the revenge I used to fantasize about, but seeing him powerless? That hit different. It was closure. It was freedom. Corbin holstered his weapon, dusted off his jacket, and let out a sharp exhale. "You two nearly got yourselves killed," he said, his tone sharp, but I caught it. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Respect, maybe? We were tracking your phones. Figured you might pull something bold. Jessica gave him a small, tired smile. Thanks for coming. Corbin nodded once. We've got it from here. Beck's not disappearing this time. As they loaded him into the SUV, it finally sank in. The guy who turned our lives upside down was in custody. This was it. Or maybe this was just the beginning of the end. Later that same day, Jessica handed over all the documents we'd collected. Corbin looked through them, impressed. He thanked us and promised that justice would be done, that Beck would face the full weight of the system. When we finally drove back into Silver Pine Lane, it felt surreal, like stepping into another world. The fear that had haunted every clipped hedge and cookie-cutter driveway? Gone. Neighbors we hadn't seen in weeks came out to greet us. Some gave us nods of gratitude. Others offered help with groceries or yard work. A new HOA board was forming, but this time, it was happening under the eye of local oversight and transparency laws. Some residents even pushed to get rid of the HOA altogether. In the end, they settled for a stripped-down version, just enough to handle lawn care and maintenance. No more enforcers. No more rules wrapped in threats. Over the next few weeks, you could feel the shift. The tension that once hung in the air like smoke? It started to lift. Kids played in driveways again. Neighbors lingered outside without fear. People smiled more, talked more. Jessica, her bruises finally fading, started to feel like herself again. Still strong, still steady, but soft in the right places. She was always helping someone, fixing a broken fence, sitting with an elderly neighbor, just being there. As for me, I dove into community work. I started attending and then helping run a support group for folks who had been harassed or bullied, especially by overreaching neighborhood groups like ours. I shared what we'd learned, helped people speak up, and reminded them they weren't alone. Even the local police circled back. They admitted they'd dropped the ball, apologized, and promised to take HOA complaints seriously going forward. Would that promise stick? No. But it was a start. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a purpose. Fighting for fairness. Giving others a voice. I even organized a gathering in the park. Nothing fancy, just neighbors sharing their stories, laughing, crying, building something new together. The news cameras eventually left. Life settled down. But this time, it settled into something better. One bright afternoon, Jessica and I took a walk past the freshly planted flower beds along the main street. The air was rich with the scent of mulch and sunshine. We chatted about simple stuff. A new cafe opening. Maybe finally going to visit our cousins out of state. Just life. We didn't mention the chaos, the chase, the fear. Not anymore. As we passed the community bulletin board, now filled with reasonable, respectful notices, Jessica slowed down. She stared at the new list of yard guidelines. Clear, fair, nothing outrageous. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Do you feel better now? Jessica asked, her voice gentle. I took a long, deep breath. Yeah, I do, I said. There's still a part of me that aches from everything we went through, but I'm not scared anymore. She smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. I'm proud of you, sis. We stood our ground. We took back our dignity, our freedom. And we never gave up. I slipped my arm through hers, feeling the strength of that bond between us. We did it, I whispered. And in that moment, standing beneath the soft warmth of the sun, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt at home. Not because I'd finally mowed the lawn to the HOA's liking, or because I followed every absurd guideline they threw at me, but because I'd reclaimed something far more important. I'd reclaimed myself. Jessica was safe. Our neighborhood was healing. And the man who tried to control it all, he was finally behind bars. Did we get revenge? In a way, we took down a system that tried to crush us, that counted on fear to keep people quiet. But what we found went deeper than revenge. We found something stronger. We found courage, unity, faith in each other. Even the neighbors who once hid behind their curtains eventually stepped forward. They shared their stories, their documents, their proof. Together, we built a case that brought everything crashing down. The final blow to Kyle Beck wasn't just ours. It was a community effort, A neighborhood that had finally decided it was done being afraid. Soon, Jessica would be starting a new chapter. She was thinking about going back into nonprofit work. Maybe even running for local office. And honestly, she'd be incredible at both. As for me, I chose to stay right here, in Silver Pine Lane. Funny? After all we'd been through, after everything this place had represented, I couldn't walk away. I didn't want to leave it behind as some haunted reminder of the past. No, I wanted to help it grow into something better. Something real. And bit by bit, that's exactly what happened. With Beck finally sentenced, the neighborhood changed. A calm settled in. People talked about closure. Some spoke of justice. Others of quiet revenge. But the part that meant the most to me? Knowing we'd done right by the people who would come after us. No one else would have to face what Jessica and I went through. Not here. Not again. And if that's not victory, I don't know what is. That's how we turned a nightmare into something bigger. A win for the whole community. From bogus HOA arrests to the Secret Service showing up at my doorstep, this wild ride taught me something I'll never forget. Even in your darkest moments, even when the odds feel impossible, resilience can lead you to justice. Jessica and I came out of this stronger, closer, more determined than ever to protect each other and the people around us. Have you ever faced a moment that felt too big to fight? Like the power against you was just too much? Sometimes all it takes is the right spark, courage, and someone you trust at your side. Because even the loudest, most relentless threat can fall when you refuse to back down. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you chills, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're hungry for more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.